Hello and welcome to the City We Became book summary. This is going to be me kind of going through the overall plot of the book City We Became by NK Jemisin. If you want to kind of know a little bit more about the actual details of what's going on in this book, I should have already posted. If not, we'll be posting a book report that kind of digs a little deeper into a lot of the concepts, which I would recommend for this book specifically because I'm going to be giving such a surface overview over this book because there's so much tied into it. I'm going to be starting with a little introductory paragraph or so. It's actually a couple connected paragraphs from one of the characters, Dr. Bronca. She is the avatar of the Bronx, the borough of New York. I'll explain it later, but she kind of has the most knowledge about what's going on in this book, and she gives like a little overview of it, and I'm going to use that before I jump into the first paragraph of the actual book because it's hard to follow along if you don't know what's really going on. A long time ago, when existence was young, there was just one world that was full of life. No one can say if it was bad or good. It was life. That first world, that first life, was a miraculous thing. But each decision those living beings made fissioned off a new world. One where some of them turned left and another where some turned right. Then each of those worlds fissioned off more worlds of their own, and so on and so on. Cities traverse these layers. People still tell stories of how terrible the Bronx is. At the same time, somewhere some realtor is talking up how amazing it is, so that people with money will come and buy up everything. At the same time, there are folks who live here for whom it's neither terrible nor amazing. It just is. All of these things are true, and that's just within our own reality. It's not just decisions is what I'm trying to say. It's every legend of this city, every lie. Those become new worlds too. All of them add to the mass that is New York until finally all of it collapses under its own weight and becomes something new, something alive. And so that is kind of explaining the basic concept of this book, which is that at a certain point of cities building up a history and a culture and an identity, it actually like manifests its own spirit that embodies that culture of that city, and then it chooses a couple champions to kind of protect it from whatever might attack it. We'll get into that later. But now we'll actually start with the book. The book opens up with the prime avatar. I don't think they actually name him, but he's like maybe, I think, late teens to early to mid 20s age. He's a street urchin running the streets. A gay black dude that was kicked out by his stepdad and is now like this graffiti artist who is the prime avatar for the city, and he's going around doing graffiti to like of these magical paintings of like holes to allow the city to breathe more. The art and magic are very much synonymous in this book, or more accurately, magic and stories more synonymously are tied. And you know, it kind of deals with how the stories that we tell are what eventually will shape the world that we create, and it just makes that a much more direct connection and sees the ways that the stories we tell, often through art, will create real life changes. And then in this book, it's just way more instantaneous. So he's going around graffitiing to allow this city of New York to breathe because it just got birthed. It just came into existence, and there's something mysterious attacking it. And so he is talking to the spirit of Sao Paulo, the avatar of Sao Paulo, who is in New York to help the avatar of New York reach full maturity before this mysterious evil attacks him, which actually ends up happening at the end of the chapter. And he actually fights it off. He wins, but you know, there is a acknowledgement that there is no like full defeat of this amorphous evil. Again, we will figure out who that person is later. But after he wins this battle, he is deeply wounded. And so while he is recovering, he's hiding out in the subway systems, like in the heart of New York, right? And because New York is such a big place and it has so many different facets and sides to its personality, its identity, and everything, there are actually 6 avatars of New York. There is this prime avatar, and then there are 5 others that represent the different boroughs, and all together they kind of make up that whole spirit of New York. And with the prime avatar being so weak, he now needs all the other smaller avatars to come together with him and imbue him with strength again to heal him so he can fight off this evil again, right? So that's how the first prologue actually of the book starts. After that, there's like a short interruption chapter where Sao Paulo is just seeing that the prime avatar is her, and he's like, yo, I gotta do something. Next chapter, we meet Manny. Manny is a African American but like Latino / white passing grad student who is coming into Manhattan for his graduate degree in fucking over poor people. I don't remember what he actually came there for, but if you listen to his mental monologue, he was a terrible person who was coming to get rich and do some terrible things in Manhattan. But on the train ride in, because he is selected by New York and New York wants him to be devoted to New York, in choosing Manny, the spirit of New York actually wipes out his past memory of who he is, where he came from, all that. So you actually open the first actual chapter of this book in this mind of this person who has no clue who he is. And, you know, considering he actually hated who he used to be because he was a bad person, this ends up being pretty positive. But let me give you a little like snippet of what that's like. There's a plastic Starbucks tumbler in the bag, sloshing faintly. He drinks from it to reassure portly guy. The coffee is cold and disgusting. He belatedly remembers refilling it sometime yesterday before he got on the train back home That's when he realizes he can't remember where he came from. And he tries, but he still can't remember the school he's here to attend. And this is when it finally hits him that he doesn't even know his own name. As he stands there floored by this triple epiphany of nothingness, the portly guy is turning up his nose at the tumbler. So yeah, he is floored to have no sense of identity. A little later, he starts to kind of get acculturated into New York. He runs into some strangers that jostle him, get him mad, but then he runs into a random kind stranger who sees a little bit of recognition of like, oh, I see a bit of you and me, and he hands Manny a card, and he's like, yo, if you need help, like, just reach out and I'll help you. And this is the moment that Manny feels himself like start to solidify as a New Yorker a little bit more. And this whole time, the reason why the dude offered his help to Manny is because Manny is going through it. Not only does he not remember who he is, but he's like flashing in and out of 2 worlds. There's the normal world, and then there's the world of the cities. And you can think of these as like layered dimensions rather than 2 separate dimensions. But when he's looking at the city world, like it throws off his entire like orientation of how things should be in the real world, because in the city world he is Manhattan. He's a whole city, and like that difference is throwing him off. He centers himself a bit, and he feels a call from the actual spirit of New York, and it's telling him, get your ass down to FDR Drive now. There's some shit going down. He's like, I need to get to FDR Drive, right? As he's thinking this, an old-timey black and white checkered New York cab pulls up out of nowhere. It's like an antiquity cab, and this white girl named Madison is behind the wheel. She's like, yo, I don't know why I'm here, but you need a ride, homie? Something tells me you need a ride. And he's like, yeah, I need a ride. And so he hops out in the car, and this is where he starts to experience the magic of being connected to New York. Because while he's here, like, things just kind of open up for them. The roadways just kind of become clear. Everything is just leading them to where they need to go because he's in like this magic cab ride that is hosted by New York. They reach FDR Drive and they see that there's mad traffic. Everything's backed up. Everybody's laying on their horns, angry as hell. It's like normal New York, but you can tell that there's something deeper going on because Manny, and now this normal New York girl, but who's a little connected to New York, so she's connected to the magic a bit, can see this giant white tentacle sprouting out of the middle of FDR Drive. And the normal humans can't really like see the tentacle itself, but they can just recognize an obstruction there. So there's just chaos as people are mad, trying to figure out how to get past this blockage that their brains can't fully understand. And this white tentacle is like slowly spreading these other phalanges of other smaller white tentacles around, and it's spreading, and Manny doesn't know what it is, but he knows it's bad. It's every single car that drives through it gets it on its wheels. It's spreading throughout the city as the cars drive around. It's getting attached to people. He's like, this shit is bad. And again, he listens to his instincts, and he goes and he grabs a umbrella from one of the people in traffic, and he hops on top of Madison's car, the taxi cab, and they fucking drive right through it, and he like jousts his way through it. He invokes the New York power of, hey, I'm walking there, and just like powers through and bursts through this tentacle, fucks it up. It dies a bit, but like the little vestiges of infection that it let go have already spread through the city, right? Manny is then like, well, I'm done with this. I gotta go figure out where I was even going, because like I said, he don't remember who he is, where he going, whatever, but he has like these vague ideas and like instincts, right? He tells Madison to drop him off at his next location. Madison's like, if you ever need me again, call me. She drops him off at what he assumes to be his dorm room, and he goes and meets his roommate, Bell Wynn. His name is Bell Wynn. Bell, the first name, Wynn, the last name. And he meets this dude, and, you know, they get a little comfortable. They have some cool conversation, but read the book if you want to read it. And then they head off to this park called Inwood Hill Park. And while they're there, they come to this little monument of this rock there called the Shorakopok. I think I'm saying that accurately. And it's named after a village that was displaced over there by the founder of Manhattan, Peter Minuit, I think is how you say his name. And it tells the story of how he originally bought that land for like some trinkets and shit, because, you know, classic colonial white domain expansion, creating some contracts and tricking the indigenous people to give away land because they didn't have the same conception of land, right? So that's how this is set up. And then while him and Bell are there, Bell is a trans man, but while him and Bell are there is a white lady that walks up, which is interesting because this is the site of like the term Karen, where it really blew up was during 2020, where this white lady in I think it was Central Park, but she was in New York, and she was walking her dog, and she tried to call the cops on some black dude because she just had some issues with him, and she was weaponizing and victimizing herself in order to get this black dude in trouble with the cops. And this is kind of reflected here, which I feel like is a little bit of a reflection of NK Jemisin being in New York, and this just being like a real world example for her that is close by. But anyway, this white lady sees the two of them hanging out at this little monument, and she starts freaking out. She calls them drug dealers, having gay sex in the park, just doing all this shit. And Manny's staring at her confused, and then he noticed that she got a little tendril in the back of her neck, like one of those white tendrils that he was fighting. And then suddenly there's like a little snap, and then the white lady is the same white lady, but like a different white lady. She's like possessed. And this new white lady wears like this bright white, like white in the sense of nothingness, not like a type like eggshell white. It's like the absence of color whiteness, so bright, like glaringly clean, stabbing into your eyes, something unnatural about it. Pure white pantsuit, pure white hair, and she starts talking completely different from the white lady that was freaking out a second ago. She's like this interdimensional magical evil. This is what the Prime Avatar was fighting against. And she starts talking to Manny, asking him questions, trying to figure out what's going on. Because she's like, I know I fought the Prime Avatar, but I can't find him. And I know there's something weird about you, but I can't tell what it is. And over talking to Manny, because Manny doesn't know shit, he slips information away. She realizes that there are 5 or 4 other lesser avatars that she'll have to track down and get rid of in order to really take down the Prime Avatar. Over the course of this conversation, the white lady that she is inhabiting then starts to turn up the hysterics. She pulls out her phone, she's calling the cops, really freaking out, right? And while she's doing this, the little white tendrils, like this miasma that is this evil entity, what appeared on the bridge, what appeared next to this lady, like it's spreading around them in the park. And nobody else can notice it, but everyone that it touches, you can see them, like their disposition to start to change. They're kind of being affected by the energy, right? And as they're standing there, Manny is the only one that can truly see it, but him and Belle know some shit. Like Belle knows some shit is going down. So they're like, what do we do? What do we do? And Manny's like, give me all the change in your pocket. And so Belle does that, and Manny starts throwing the change, the money, at the little white tendrils around them, and they start to melt away. And like the idea behind this is because what is spreading in this moment is kind of like annexing power of white supremacy, I guess you could say. The encroaching nature that kind of engulfs an area and pushes anything that doesn't include whiteness out of it. It is what this white lady is in the act of doing by trying to call the cops on these 2 people and like push them out. And Manny fights back because the power of Manhattan is tied to money and value. Manny is using money. He's essentially like magically buying back the land, if that makes sense. But I mean, he throws his credit card and it only does like a little bit, because obviously like the value of the park land is sky miles above where it was back when Peter Minuit cheated out the Native Americans. So he's kind of like fighting back against the encroachment of whiteness by buying back the land, because this white domineering colonial energy, it has its foothold through that stolen value. But he's losing this battle because they don't have enough money just walking around to buy back the park. But while he's going through all this, suddenly there's music playing, right? It's loud rap music. You know, New York is the home of hip hop, the birthplace. And he looks to the left and he sees this, like, I think mid-40s black lady coming down. She's like, you can tell by the way I use my walk. Like, she's got style, and she's like striding up in her stiletto heels. I don't know if she actually has stiletto heels, but she does in my mind, and a crisp pantsuit. And she comes and she's playing hip hop off of her phone. And this is the avatar of Brooklyn. Her name is actually Brooklyn Thompson. And she uses like her connection to music as her way to fight back against this lady in white. We'll call her Madame Rose for the second, because she'll get that moniker a chapter from now. But she basically banishes her. The white lady becomes a normal white lady again, who, I mean, she's still a normal racist white lady. So she's still screaming and stuff. Manny walks over and just straight up human threatens her, because I told you he used to be like a terrible person, an old enforcer or some shit. And so he just walks up and he's like, if you don't walk away, you getting the beat down. And she's like, oh, and she leaves. Third chapter, we are introduced to the avatar of Staten Island. Is really sheltered, racist, but she's racist in the ignorant way, where she was raised around a lot of ignorant ideals, and she's just never left her small island town of Manhattan. And so she just holds those fears in her because that's all she's been exposed to about other cultures that aren't her predominantly like Irish, white American Staten Island neighborhood, right? And the chapter starts with her trying to buy a ferry to go to the mainland. And she's like super scared because her dad has always told her that the mainland is scary and not to go over there, and that she's not strong enough to actually go and do that on her own. So she's like very nervous, but she feels the call of New York telling her to go help the Prime Avatar. So she's at the ferry, and while she's there, it's, you know, New York busy. She's brushing by a bunch of people, and a black dude brushes up against her breast, and she freaks out and she starts taking off running, right? And there's a Madame Rose is actually there with her. And so Madame Rose starts running with her, and she's just like, I don't know what's going on, but I'm running. And then while she's running, her dad actually calls her. So she stops and she calls her dad. Whole time Madame Rose is there standing with her, touching her shoulder, looking like she's trying to do something, but like not being able to do it. On the phone call, Aislinn, that's the Staten Island lady's name. Her name is Aislinn. Aislinn. I call her Aislinn. I'm probably super wrong. I'm so sorry. But anyway, Aislinn is talking on the phone with her dad. Her dad talks about how he unrightfully arrested some Puerto Rican dude, some racist shit, talking about how they got to go back to their country, whatever. She's like, okay, dad, bye. She hangs up, and then the Madame Rose is still standing there with her, and she starts talking to Aislinn, and she's like, listen, you don't want to go to that mainland. You got to stay here, stay on your island, and if any of the avatars try to contact you, you come and get me. And she starts sprouting these little like tendrils all around Staten Island. She's like, if you ever have an issue, just speak into this thing and I will be summoned and I'll come and help you. She has revealed herself as like a supernatural being to Aislinn, and Aislinn takes this in stride, because not in stride, but she takes it because like she is New York now. Even though these people are confused, like they are New York, so they have a sense of this is what it is, right? From there, it's another short connective interruption chapter where Sao Paulo is saying he needs to get some help. The help he gets is Hong Kong. We'll get into that later because that it's really just a short connective chapter. Then we meet the avatar of the Bronx, Branca. Branca is a like mid-70s art director at the Bronx Art Center. She is an aging lesbian, as she would describe herself, a veteran of the Stonewall riots. If you don't know what that is, go look it up. And she's from the Lenape Native American tribe, which was a tribe that used to occupy most of, or a lot of like upstate New York to like New Jersey area. She still kind of has that tie to her culture, and that'll play in later because it relates to how she is the avatar of the Bronx. But it opens up with her in the bathroom. She's having this little argument with one of her co-workers, Yijing. They get interrupted by a different co-worker that's like, yo, we got a crowd of men out here and we really need Branca out here to deal with this. Branca's like, okay, give me 2 seconds. I gotta finish up in the bathroom. I'll be out there. While she's in there, she starts to hear someone from a bathroom start to talk to her. This person in the bathroom starts being hella creepy, talking about, oh, you humans are so weird. Like, you know, some weird shit where if you were in the bathroom and someone said that shit, you'd be like, yo, who the fuck are you? Over the course of this, you find out that it's Madame Rose in the bathroom. And she is basically just trying to, like, attack Bronca. But the way that these attacks are done, similar to how the avatars fight back against this evil in a, like, spiritual and mental way. A lot of what this evil is trying, like, it's not trying to kill them per se. It's not trying to walk up and just, like, stab them. It's trying to erase their essence of who they are, so they can't pour that essence back into the prime avatar of New York. Madame Rose is threatening her from the bathroom stall, and Bronca has been through some shit in her life, and she's from the Bronx. So she walks up and she boots that bathroom stall door open, and she gets a glimpse of Madame Rose's world, which is like this stark white world with like weird geometric shapes and stuff. She only gets a glimpse before she just sees like just a normal bathroom stall, and she's like, what the hell happened, right? And then she's kind of like inundated with all this knowledge that the city of New York imparts to her. The city of New York, the spirit of it, essentially was born maybe a couple days before the initial moments of this book. So a lot of the avatars are just like coming into their being and realizing that they're even these champions. There's no one like walking them through it. So she just gets like downloaded with all this information about her borough and everything, right? From there, we go to a little short chapter following Manny and Brooklyn Thompson. And this chapter just gets us to learn a little bit more about the geographic nature of New York, the cultural nature of New York, and Brooklyn Thompson as an individual as they make their way to go find Queens, right? And then we switch back to Bronca's perspective because she's gone out to now confront those people that the art director was like, yo, I need your help out here with. And it's a group of essentially like man bun wearing white people. It's this racist art collective that essentially does like shock value racist art as a way of pretending it's satire in this way and that, and just spreading some shitty ideas under the guise of calling it art, you know? Just classic art shit, you know? I don't know if you watched this, but I read Call of Cthulhu in preparation for this, and there's a lot of inspiration even in the conceptualization of evil, and it shows up in this because Call of Cthulhu is an example of high art that's deeply racist. And this art collective is kind of like the modern era instance of that. And so they're showing like a bunch of paintings of like lynchings and rapings and all these things, just awful shit. And then she's like, get the fuck out of my art center. The head dude, they call him Strawberry Man Bun because he has strawberry hair in a man bun. Strawberry Man Bun is like, okay, just let me show you our final piece of art, because most of their art is trash. And he's like, let's just show you this final piece of art, and if you don't like it, we'll leave. And he unveils this painting called Dangerous Mental Machines, which is a allusion to a phrase that H.P. Lovecraft, the writer of Call of Cthulhu, called Chinese people because, again, deeply racist. It's a picture of Chinatown, and it's a picture dehumanizing. It's a very well done picture, but it's a well done picture that dehumanizes the Chinese people that it paints in it. And like deeper than this, like this act of personal erasure, because it's imbued with this deeper magical element, it starts to draw Bronca in and starts to like attempt to erase who she is through the communication that this art is having with her, because again, art has a deeper layer in this book, and she is able to snap out of it. And before she gets fully pulled into it, one of her younger co-workers, I think her name is Venetia, steps in and she's like, hey yo, old B. She calls her old B. She's like, old B, are you okay? You were kind of losing yourself there. And Bronca realizes that she almost fell for this attack, And she's like, y'all need to get the fuck out of here, because all of these white men have these white tendrils attached to them. And so like they're agents of this central evil, but they're still human. They don't really know what's going on for real with all this magic shit going on. They're just being the tools for this evil, you know? And so they realized that whatever went down, things didn't go how they expected it to do. So they pack up their shit and leave. And they give like a, we'll be back, you'll hear from us again, you lesbian, you know, Indian type shit. And so Bronca gets everyone together and she's like, listen, we got to make sure that, because this is the art center, they have people called key holders that are artists that actually live in the center. And so she's like, everyone make sure that you don't leave here by yourself, and make sure you're just very careful, because clearly there's some white men lurking in the area with some bad feelings towards us. Because of that, she decides to drive Venetia home. And Venetia is technically a resident of New Jersey, but she's sort of like this adopted daughter for Bronca. And so she takes Venetia to the Old Bronx River. Might be the Harlem River, I think, actually. And she performs this powwow dance as a way to tap into the story of the city, because powwow dances are, if not most, tell stories. So because she is Lenape Native American, like this is her tapping in to that deep history, because her people come from the land before it was even a New York. And she tells Venetia the story of what's actually going, which is actually the like little preamble that I gave you at the beginning of the book. And she does this because she feels very connected to Venetia, and she just wants to make sure that, you know, she has a bit more of an idea of what's going on so she can protect herself. Venetia is kind of like Madison, the taxi driver, where she's so New York that she can actually kind of tap into the magical goings on and see and understand a bit what's going on, which is why she's the one that saved Bronca when she started to get erased by the painting. Next chapter we hop into is chapter 9, and that's where we meet the Avatar of Queens, who is Padmini Prakash. And she immediately hops into the shit because she notices, looking out of her apartment window, her next door neighbor, I think, has a house, or maybe it's an apartment with a pool, but it's this old lady named Mrs. Yu, and her 2 young grandchildren are playing in the pool. And at the bottom of the pool is this little tentacle thing that's going in to start pulling them down and drowning them. And she sees this and she's like, I gotta do something. And without even really thinking about it, she, like, the spirit of New York synchronizes with her once, and she basically teleports through the walls of her apartment straight down to the poolside and pulls the 2 boys out of the pool, saving them. And then the tendrils, with nothing to take now, disappear. At this same moment, or actually a couple minutes after Padmini does this, she is met by Manny and Brooklyn, who have finally arrived. And then the 3 of them sit down and are kind of just, you know, updating Padmini on what's going on in the city, where they have to go next, the fact that they have to go find Bronca and Aislinn. They decide that they need, like, because it's getting late in the day, they're like, we're gonna go tomorrow. So Brooklyn Thompson is like I said, she's on like the city council, so she's just like, hey, I got a place that we can hunker down for a minute, right? She has like assistants and shit. And she owns 2 brownstones, like they've been in her family for generation. And so she takes them back to her 2 brownstones. One of them is just like a brownstone that they can just like work out of. The one next door to it is where her family lives. Her daughter, her father, a bunch of her family just live in that brownstone, right? So they go there. After, there's like a little short paragraph talking about how Sao Paulo shows up to the apartment building after them, still tracking them down. While they're at Brooklyn's brownstone, they turn in for the night. And while Brooklyn is kind of just thinking about life and shit that night, she sees a bunch of these weird white tentacly creatures start crawling up of her family's next door brownstone. So the infecting elements of Madame Rose, like all these white tendrils and stuff, they're not supposed to be able to infect things that are connected to the avatars in like a deeply intrinsic way, which apply to these brownstones because they've been in Brooklyn's family for generations and she's bought them outright. So she's surprised when she sees all these white tentacles crawling on it, because this is where it was supposed to be their headquarters, their safe house. She goes over there, runs over there, she starts battling against all the tendrils and stuff, wipes them out. She gets together with Manny and Padmini and she's like, why the hell did this happen? And then they find out that there is an eviction notice on that brownstone because there is this entity called Better New York Foundation. It's the same foundation that was funding Strawberry Man Bun and his crew, and now they put some money in order to get New York to declare the brownstone as eminent domain and then kick Brooklyn out. Essentially, again, this is just the anthropomorphizing of magic to apply to how evil is actually acted out in the world. And so this is how it shows up. After they find this out, Brooklyn's a little stressed, but they got bigger things to worry about because they still got to find Bronca and Aislinn. Staten Island, according to NK Jemisin, is kind of like the redheaded stepchild of New York. So everybody is super duper reluctant to go over to Staten Island because they're part of New York. It's what they feel. So they're like, how about we go to Bronca next? The next chapter talks about what Bronca was doing all this while that Brooklyn, Padmini, and Manny were trying to get over to her because, like I told you, they turned in for the night. So it's like, what happened during that night into that morning into that afternoon while they were fighting all this shit? What was Bronca doing? She came back the next morning early and she runs into Madame Rose perusing the gallery. Madame Rose is looking at a art collection that Bronca put together that is a collection of the prime avatars graffiti around the city, and Bronca feels a natural connection to these artwork and these paintings because they're so tied to the story of New York because it's actually coming from New York that she just feels that connection. So she created an exhibit around it even though she didn't know who it was by. Madame Rose is looking at all these paintings when Bronca comes in early, and so Bronca comes up early, and this is Madame Rose possessing a different person. So she's still in the all white pantsuit with all white hair, but she looks a bit different because this is technically a different human that she's possessing. And she starts talking about, ooh, like, I like this art. Bronca's like, I like this art. Madame Rose is like, I am represented by a Better New York Foundation, and we would like to give you guys so much money. Like, I forgot how much, but it was mad money in donations. All you have to do is sponsor Strawberry Man Bun and his friends in this building. Bronca stands 10 toes. She's like, you are not getting in here. That is bad art. It's racist art. It is poorly thought out. And regardless of how much money you try to get in here, we aren't going to do it. So Madame Rose ups the price and then tells her, we have one more condition. All of these paintings that the prime avatar, like this collection you put together, all of this gotta go. Bronca's like, fuck you. And so Madame Rose leaves. After Madame Rose leaves, Bronca gets a call from Raoul, who is like on the board of directors, and he's putting the pressure on her to take the deal and tells her that the rest of the board of the directors are putting the pressure on her to take the deal. If she doesn't accept the deal, that they will most likely fire her. So Bronca's kind of caught in this 50-50, like, do I stand 10 toes or do I capitulate on this small thing? because if they replace me with someone worse than me that will easily bend the knee to all this money, then maybe I'm cutting my nose to spite my face. Like, maybe I'm just fighting a battle that ultimately is on principle good, but will do more detriment. While she's struggling with this, she finds out that her and the rest of the people of her co-workers, Venetia, Yijing, all her people, got doxxed by Strawberry Man Bun and his art collective, because they're this shock value art collective that likes to do videos about getting rejected from places so they can like craft a identity around being ostracized as white men, and just build up a whole following based off of that, and then create bad art. You know, just that loop of creating bad art, getting rejected, claiming it's because you're white, getting followers from it, and then keep doing the same thing, you know. And so they dox all these girls. I think they're all women, but they dox the art center. And you know, this doxing is where you leak the personal information of someone on the internet so that real life people can track them down and either mess up their online footprint or really mess them up in real life. And so they start trying to protect themselves. They go through all these processes to clean up their online footprint and everything. And then after all of that is done, it's late at night, and then they're closing down the art center. And when they're doing that, it's late at night. Bronca's one of the last ones to leave, and she goes downstairs and finds out that Strawberry Man Bun and his crew have broken into the art center and taken down all of the Prime Avatar's paintings, and I'll have it soaked in gasoline, ready to light that shit up. She's about to confront them, and then a portal opens up in the fucking roof, and it's that same world that Bronca saw in the bathroom stall. That same world of pure whiteness, and Madame Rose comes out of that portal in the roof. And with it, she brings a bunch of hideous ghouls and shit from that world. And Bronca's just going through it because she thinks this is the moment that she dies. And then she really just like, stand up! Like that video, she bucks up on them. She connects to her New York energy, and she just banishes that shit, right? She sends out like a wave that just clears the whole area of this nasty energy. After she clears out Madame Rose's energy, Man Bun and his crew get the cops called on them. They're arrested. All of that is kind of wrapped up. And then after all this shit happens, after Bronca fended for herself, Manny, Brooklyn, and Pat Beanie show up finally. This leads us into the next chapter where we follow along with Aislinn one more time. And she's home feeling very down on herself because she's like, my dad's right. I couldn't get on the ferry out of here. I am just a loser and I should just stay on this island and be safe. Her mom comes and joins her sitting on the rooftop, and her mom is this black Irish lady, and she starts talking about how she used to be like have a whole life for herself because she is now a stay-at-home mom to this white Irish cop, and all she'd be doing is really just holding the house down. But she was like, I used to be a professional musician, I had all these dreams, and I just don't want you to cut yourself down the way I have, Aislinn. And Aislinn is like, wow, like I never even knew this side of her. Aislinn leaves this conversation, and her mom go inside and find that her dad is hanging out with this dude named Connell. And Connell has like swastika tattoos, like he's one of those, and he's just chopping it up with her dad. They're having a great time together. And then when her dad leaves, Connell starts, flirting with her, harassing her, and then he actually straight up just sexually assaults her. And she is a fucking city, or at least a part of a city. She's Staten Island, so she throws homie clear through the fence, like throws his ass straight through the fence, and then she just walks away booking it, because she's just like, on one hand she's scared, on one hand she's angry, on one hand she's confused, and she just wants to get out of there. So she walks out through the hole she busted in her fence by throwing homie through it, and so she's just like power walking away through the hole she made in the fence. And as she's walking away, a car pulls up, and the window rolls down, and it's Sao Paulo in the car. He's tracked her down, and he's like, listen, you got to get in the car. And because they have like this city spirit connection, she kind of trusts him, but he's also Brazilian and a foreigner, so she's like scared. And at the same time, Madame Rose shows up in a wave of feathery tendrils. And she walks out, and she's like, listen, don't go with him. You know, I already kind of polyed it up with you. We friends. He's evil. Stay with me, and I'll take care of you. But Aislinn is actually mad at her as well, because she knows that Madame Rose was just idly watching while Connell attempted to sexually assault her. And obviously Madame Rose doesn't give two shits. But Aislinn is like, I'm not feeling you right now. So, not feeling both of them, when Sao Paulo tries to reach out for her, she attacks Sao Paulo and hits him with some energy, the energy of Staten Island, and she shatters his forearms and subsequently causes great damage in the actual city of Sao Paulo, because he is that avatar. And when she hits Sao Paulo, he is just instinctually lashes back out at her. And when he hits her, he breaks he breaks Staten Island's only subway line. So they can no longer take the subway to go get Staten Island. This next chapter starts with Bronca, Manny, Brooklyn, and Padmini, the avatar of Queens, all trying to start getting along and talk to each other, because they all were compelled to come to each other, but they're all different people, and they start arguing, they start fighting, having disagreements, and honestly, it's super charming. I love the way that humans are expressed in this book, and it's just such a cool crew. But eventually they get their shit together, and in the middle of this, Hong Kong walks in with Sao Paulo passed out in his arms, and they revive him to a certain degree, like he was unconscious. They revive him with cigarettes and like Brazilian coffee and shit, like things from his city that make him more him, and so they heal him. And as they do this, he gets back up, and then they synchronize in their like magical city world and find out that they need to go, they have a general idea of where the prime avatar is, so they're like, we need to get there. So Bronca sees the tiling in the vision that they get, and she's like, I know where that is. And so they end up splitting up. Manny and Sao Paulo go to protect the prime avatar, and Hong Kong, Padmini, Brooklyn, Bronca go to get Aislinn. So the next chapter pops us back into Staten Island's point of view, Aislinn. And it's the morning after Connell tried to sexually assault her. She goes downstairs and she finds her dad and Connell like polying it up, because her dad's a cop, and Connell told a story of how some black dude tried to break in and Connell fought him off. And so they're all celebrating in the kitchen. Aislinn is just like, whatever the fuck. She leaves out the front door and she sees a big ass white pillar in her yard, and it's kind of like that tentacle in the middle of FDR Drive. It's a large fucking, like, absolutely huge, just think like skyscraper pillar straight into the sky. And she's just like, what the hell? But she just hops in her car, she starts driving to work, and she summons the lady in white, Madame Rose, to talk to her about what's going on. Madame Rose appears in the rearview mirror, and she basically tells her, like, these pillars are going to merge our universes, my world and your world, so we can come into this universe and take it over, essentially. And Aislinn is like, bet, peace, like, I'll just let you. And because Aislinn, like, she is so caught up in her world of like being so separatist from the rest of New York and really symbolically the rest of the world, that she's like, I don't really give a fuck what they do to the rest of y'all. Like, as long as I'm safe here in my little world, then we're good. Madame Rose disappears and Aislinn goes into work. Then we pop into the perspective of the crew that is actually going to rescue, quote unquote, the Avatar of Staten Island, being Bronca, Padmini, Hong Kong, and Manny. And they're all driving in the car, arguing and shit, until they start to see monsters pop up. By now, because these pillars have been erected around town, the merging of the universes are kind of happening a bit, and more of the miasma is spread throughout the entirety of New York. So like the world is kind of shadowed. It's not like the sun isn't there, it's like the sun is there but no shine is coming from it. The world is fading and dull, and they're driving through the world, and certain buildings like Starbucks and stuff are fully possessed by this otherworldly magic and are turning into these monsters that are chasing down their car and attacking them as they try to rush to get to Staten Island. When they finally get there, they pull up in front of Aislinn's house. They see the giant pillar. They're like, what the fuck? That's terrible. Madame Rose steps out. She appears and she's like, I was waiting for y'all. And she tells them that her real name is Rillier. Another direct allusion to H.P. Lovecraft's book Call of Cthulhu, because that's the city that was said to house the dead eldritch horrors of Cthulhu and his brethren, right? So this is basically NK Jemisin being like, this is the face, like this is who we've been truly fighting. It is a otherworldly city built of evil and miasma and erasure and wrongness. And then the chapter ends with Rillier and the avatars minus Aislinn and Manny squaring up to fight each other. For the next chapter, we switch to Madison, the old cab driver, driving Manny and Sao Paulo to the old central subway station, I believe, in order, because that's like where the Avatar is hiding, like in these subway tunnels. So they go there, they're able to get in, but once they're in there, they find the Avatar. But now they have to wait for the rest of the avatars. And while they're waiting, a train, an entire fucking train, gets possessed by this otherworldly thing and it starts to attack them. And right before Manny fights this train tentacly amoeba monster, we switch back over to Padmini and the rest of the avatars but we're in the mind of Aislinn, who actually hears Rillier and the Avatar squaring up outside her house. So Aislinn is sleeping inside, and she hears all the Avatars fighting Rillier outside, and she runs outside, and all the Avatars are like, oh my god, you're here, thank god, we came here for you, Staten Island, Aislinn, whatever. And she's like, fuck y'all, get out of here. And they're like, what do you mean? And so she attacks them. Hits them with this blast of energy. She's at her most powerful because they're all on this island of Staten Island. And while she is attacking them, then Rillier opens up a portal and she's like, y'all better get out of here, because I have Venetia, old B Bronca's little apprentice girl that she told the story to. Rillier kidnapped Venetia, and she had her trapped in like this anthropomorphic restaurant that was eating her. And she was like, if you don't want nothing to happen to her, you best get out of here. And this makes the avatars more angry. But before they can do anything, Aislinn opens up a portal and banishes them all somewhere. Where do they go? They go to Wall Street. They're like, we don't have all the avatars, what do we do? And they're like, fuck it, like, we have to at least try to wake up the avatar, the prime avatar, with just us, without Aislinn, because she's given up. And so they all head to the central subway station, where they find that Manny has already defeated the train amoeba monster. One of the things I dislike about this book is that they don't show us that battle when it should have been maybe the coolest battle in the book, and the one of Rilye fighting like squaring up with all of the avatars. I think they kind of cheated out of the two biggest battles that could have happened. But they find Manny post battle. He is laying naked and bloody. And they walk up and they're like, "Hey bro, you okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm actually okay." Like he was fucked up, but like he wasn't about to die or anything. And they're like, "We don't know what to do. Like there's no way for us to wake up the Prime Avatar." And this is where Venetia steps up, because they actually, when Aislinn teleported them all to Wall Street, Venetia was one of the people she teleported. And in trying to wake up the Prime Avatar of New York, Venetia becomes the Avatar of New Jersey. And with her power, without Staten Island, they're able to imbue the Prime Avatar with enough essence and energy to fight back against Rilye. And the reason why New Jersey was able to step in was because, like, it's technically different from New York, but because of the way that New Jersey and New York have such a symbiotic relationship, they're very much culturally connected in a way that it was a decent substitute for Staten Island. And so with all their powers combined, the Captain Planet the shit, synchronize, and they destroy the main vestiges of Rilye. But like, she still survives. There's still parts of her out there. And you know, the future books are probably going to be tracking down exactly where she comes from, who she serves, because she serves like these masters, which I'm sure are like certainly some level of reference to Cthulhu and everything, because Rilye was the city that held these gods, but it wasn't them themselves. And Rilye says throughout the book that she serves something, like she's not doing this for herself. But the book kind of ends there. There's a little short wrap-up moment where the avatars are kind of talking to each other and just wrapping up, but that's essentially the ending of the book. And it's a really, really good book. I don't know how much or how interesting this video will actually come out at having described it, but I think that this is one of a brilliant way to bring mythological storytelling into the new age. You know, mythology is originally a way of teaching lessons about the world structure and lessons about humans, about the way we interact, the movements of the world. And I think that even though the magic system in this can be kind of convoluted at first, once you kind of click into the idea, then it's much easier to follow along with the magic system. And I think it's a very beautiful way to express the ways that capitalism, white supremacy, social stratification, and colonialism and all these ideas interact with each other in our current world and craft the reality of our modernity right now, while also like being able to tell a magical story and have that magic be a reflection of realities. It has a very deep conversation about the tools of colonialism and white supremacy and how it shows up. It's really a discussion of growth and diversity versus uniform sterilization, assimilation, and a viewpoint on humanity that commodifies it to a point that dehumanizes it. It's kind of hard to pin it all down and just try to succinctly say it, but hopefully I've given you a good idea of what this book feels like and what it's like to read it. I highly recommend this book if you are someone that's very character driven or has a lot of love for New York, or has a lot of love for unique uses of perspective, or has a lot of love for magical realism and urban fantasy, these all hit those very well. I'm just gonna leave it there. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hopefully I can edit it to be under 30 minutes. If not, we failed the create a video under 30 minutes challenge again, but I'll catch you next time and maybe we can do it.